It was deep night, all those lights still cold and distant despite being so bright, that sickening chemical glow humming overhead. The linoleum floor of the hospital read like an endless, ugly stream beneath my shoes, as I tried to focus on the hum of the vending machine, or the distant croaking voice of an orderly calling out numbers. Anything to drown out the words being aimed straight at me. "You just won out. That's all it is, John," my brother snapped, sharply. His voice felt too large for the corridor. I stood with my back pressed to the wall, arms crossed tight over my chest. Not because I wanted to appear defensive, but because otherwise I might just unravel right there in front of them. Mom sat on the orange vinyl bench, pale under her coat, dabbing at her face while refusing to look at me. Hurt or disappointment, maybe both. I could never tell with her. My father leaned against the window, the New York skyline jagged but small behind him, eyes clouded with a kind of sadness that had always seemed more about him than about me. "I'm not running," I said, forcing my voice steady. "I just need to try something, for once." My aunt, who always thought she was the peacemaker, piped up. "Making guitars, strings, and boxes in this city, John?" She laughed, a short nasal snort. "Musician dreams are for people with money. You got school loans. You got a job here, with benefits. Nobody builds things here. You want to pretend you're in Italy?" "It's called being a luthier," I muttered. She clapped, mock applause. "Luthier. There you go, everyone. Runs in the family, the dreamers, always broke." Now everyone was looking. Even a passing nurse gave a second glance over her clipboard. My face felt too hot for the long, heavy March night. My brother Paul jabbed a finger in my direction like he was pointing out a stain. "You make guitars for who? Taylor Swift? There's a reason nobody does it, John. It's a dumb fantasy. Dad built a whole career from nothing. He's not too proud to answer phones on night shifts. And you," Dad tried to cut him off. "Enough, Paul." "No," Paul insisted. "He needs to hear it. He wants us picking up the mess when it all falls apart. But we can't. Not anymore." Mom sniffed, voice small. "We can't." "Try if you must," Dad sighed, shaking his head. "But don't expect applause when you come crawling back. Life isn't about chasing some childish obsession. I hoped you'd learn that from watching me lay brick every weekend." I straightened, swallowing the raw taste of words I wanted desperately to spit back at them. Words about dreams, risk, and dignity. But I could see what I meant to them. A failed promise. One more burden to carry through the city's crowded days. Hurt scored deep in my chest, but a strange dignity pooled behind my eyes. I stepped out from the wall and lifted my duffel, the same battered one from high school. I walked away as quietly as I could, the sound of their accusations following me through doors that wheezed shut behind my back. That was the last winter I ever lived in their apartment, the winter I left home to become nobody in a city full of strangers. Things didn't start with anything like music or magic. Mostly, things started with dust, bruised thumbs, and the echo of my own loneliness. My first days, I sublet a closet-sized room above a noisy laundromat in Bushwick, where the lint settled over the windowsills and the air shook with the clatter of dryers. The landlord didn't care about the odd tang of shellac or the midnight whir of my ancient hand pump drill. He barely cared whether the heat worked or not. That suited me fine. I worked after hours at a copy shop near 10th, the kind of job where your fingertips are always dark with ink, the kind where nobody asked your name twice. Evenings and nights belonged to maple, spruce, and mahogany, the woods I could barely afford, coaxed into being from scraps and discard bins. You'd be surprised how easy it is to feel invisible here. At first, I craved it every time I sanded a neck. Every time I bent aside over a rusted iron pipe heated on my own stove, I told myself it didn't matter if anyone ever played it. This city didn't need another luthier, but I needed to prove something to myself. That was enough for a while. When I was sanding, my hands remembered the first guitar I'd ever held. The beat-up Yamaha my uncle pawned off on us years ago. That muddy orange finish, peeling at the corners. The fret buzzing on half the strings but still singing with a strange sweetness. I remembered the thrill of that sound, trembling through me. That memory, the delicate brown paper scent of old lacquer, became my guide. But the city gives nothing for free. Rent trickled up. Some nights, exhaustion pressed so heavy on my eyelids that I nodded off over the workbench, waking up with the dull ache of dreams I couldn't afford. Sometimes my tools went missing, borrowed perhaps, by roommates with sticky fingers who saw only the price of pawn, not the value of craft. And always, always, the doubt. Family voices in my head. Nobody needs a hand-built guitar in Brooklyn, Paul used to say. Some nights I half believed it. The cold crept in, despite the heater's groaning protests. The only warmth was the melody I sometimes heard from the jazz club down the street, trickling up through the floorboards when the city couldn't sleep. I merely quit that spring. One rainy Thursday, soaked to the bone after a shift, I came back to find my best set of sides, beautiful, golden brown maple I'd begged from an old carpenter on the edge of Williamsburg, snapped in two, the box warped in the humidity from the broken window. All that work and money wasted by one storm and one landlord who never got to it. I sat on the floor with the pieces in my hands, staring at the splinters, feeling stupid. The urge to call home nearly strangled me. Maybe Paul was right. Maybe I'd wasted it all. But I picked up the phone and dialed someone else. He was an old violin maker I'd met at a flea market the previous fall, a snarly Lithuanian with broken English and thick, bandaged hands. His name was Petras, and he was the first person to see my work without smirking. "Come tomorrow," he told me over the static, no questions asked. In Petras's shop, light pooled like honey over the workbenches. He moved slow and creaky, showing me how to read grain by touch, how to let wood set instead of forcing it. He laughed when he saw my split maple. "Good wood can be glued," he said. "Bad wood breaks in heart, not in body." And so we started again, day by day, dollar by dollar. I took odd repair jobs, building up my name in the tight circuit of musicians who still cared for handmade things. In Petras's shop, I watched soloists limbering up battered cellos and classical guitarists hesitantly picking through old cases, faces hungry for an instrument that remembered their touch. There was beauty in it, quiet, solid, like the city itself despite the chaos. I learned patience. I learned to listen not just to wood, but to people whose pride covered the same wounds as mine. The first real break came nearly 3 years in, a lifetime, it seemed, since that hospital night. I'd read about an open competition, advertised by a luthier circle somewhere uptown. Old-timers mostly, some young Turks trying to revive the old crafts against a factory tide. New York Custom String Showcase. I didn't think I'd win. Still, I entered, submitting a classical I built after months of stolen wood and even more borrowed time. The presentation was held in a cramped, overheated church basement, folding chairs and black coffee everywhere, a tang of wood glue and old newsprint in the air. Dozens of instruments lined the tables. My own guitar looked humble, plain spruce top, but the rosette was something I'd inlaid by hand. A mosaic of tiny abalone and walnut slices inspired by subway tiles from my old neighborhood. It sparkled under the fluorescent lights, but I wondered if anyone would notice. One by one, judges and musicians fingered through the racks. Some guitars blared with fancy finishes and expensive bracing, expensive woods I could never hope to own. I lingered by the punch bowl, feeling out of place, until an older man with a shock of gray hair sat and played mine. He strummed soft at first, then with increasing intent, coaxing out notes that lifted in the hush between conversations. People slowly turned their heads. He set it down and called over one of the organizers. I saw them conferring quietly. Hands expressive, but faces unreadable. At the end, the host read off names, third, second, then, highly commended, Jonathan Ilian, for a classical guitar evoking the iconography and heartbeat of the city. Tone mature, craft exquisite. Applause, just a sprinkle, but enough. I found myself shaking hands, blinking back an ugly rush of tears, not from pride so much as a release of every bit of pain I'd pent up since leaving home. Afterwards, the gray-haired man approached me. He was Emil Costa, a session player who'd worked with a dozen names I'd grown up hearing. "You got something here, son," he said in a voice roughened by years of whiskey and applause. "In 2 or 3 years, you'll build better than me." He handed me his card, and so began the long, hard, invisible climb of trust. I didn't become rich overnight, or ever. But word spread. A guitar to Costa's protege led to 2 commissions for jazz boxes. A cellist asked for repairs. A Broadway pit musician wanted a custom baritone. I kept my nights and weekends in the shop, hands scarred but sure, rent paid by the skin of my teeth. Sometimes I'd allow myself to walk the streets past my old block on the Lower East Side. I'd watch families hurrying in and out of bodegas, men with faces like my father's, women clutching children in tired arms, and remember how I once believed happiness grew from not wanting too much. By now, I had a small workshop, a studio shared with 2 other artisans, floor poured smooth, the air carrying resin and hope. Musicians started visiting from word of mouth. We'd sit, talk, play, laugh. Sometimes I'd pour them Turkish coffee in chipped